Dave Krupa moved to Omaha, Nebraska after the 12-year relationship with the mother of his 2 children ended. He needed a fresh start, so he began working at an auto repair shop and decided to try online dating. He started going on dates with a girl named Liz and some other women, but made it clear he just wanted to keep things casual. While working one day, a woman named Carrie came to the repair shop, and immediately her beauty caught Dave's eye. A 37-year-old single mother. He asked her out, they had a great time, and she ended up going to his apartment that night. Carrie told Dave she didn't want a serious relationship, and immediately Dave thought to himself, wow, I really hit the jackpot with this one. As Carrie left Dave's apartment the next morning, she passed by Liz in the hallway, a woman Dave was seeing for the past several months. She had stopped by to grab some of her belongings from his place. About 2 weeks later, Dave received a text from Carrie at work. She requested to move in with him. Dave was confused, since they've only started dating and discussed earlier how they both wanted to keep the relationship casual. He texted back declining her request. Fine, I hate you. I'm dating someone else. I don't want to see you anymore, Carrie replied. The sudden change in attitude caught him off guard. Geez, guess I dodged a bullet with that one, Dave thought to himself. At the same time, Carrie's mother Nancy, someone she talks to every day, also received strange texts, including one that wrote she moved to Kansas for her new job, and she will be picking up her son Max from her soon. Nancy tried calling her daughter for clarification, but she never answered the phone. She just continued texting. Carrie even went as far as to not show up for a family wedding and her own father's funeral. Something was definitely off, so Nancy reported the case to the police of a potential missing person. She mentioned Carrie's bipolar, so officers thought she must be on a manic episode. Dave continued receiving close to 100 heinous text messages from Carrie. I hate you so much that I want to drive a knife in your heart. I will do what I can to make you suffer. You're such a horrible person. A notable email he got said, my favorite thing to do is stand outside your window and stare at you. Liz, the woman Dave ended up being in a relationship with, was constantly mentioned in texts as well. She also received disturbing messages from Carrie, which confused both of them because the only interaction the 2 women ever had was in that hallway at Dave's apartment. 10 days later, Liz files a report to the police and tells Dave that Carrie found her garage, vandalized, and spray-painted these words on the walls. Now there's 2 reports filed on Carrie. One reported of a missing person, and the other, a stalking incident. When one night as Dave was walking home, he recognized Carrie's car parked outside as he had worked on it at the repair shop all those months ago. Freaked out, he takes a picture of the car and the license plate and immediately sends it to the police. They came, but couldn't find her anywhere in the neighborhood. After checking the car, they did find a single fingerprint on a mint container. However, evidence showed it didn't belong to Carrie or anyone on their database. Dave then gets an insane email from Carrie, containing a photo of what looks like a woman tied up. I have Liz tied up in the trunk of a car. You need to tell her that you hate her and that she's a otherwise, I'll kill her. Dave was so numb to these messages, he didn't freak out. Hey, by chance, were you tied up and thrown in the trunk of a car? To which Liz denied that ever happening. Carrie's mother was losing hope. I am sorry I missed the funeral, Carrie texted. The only way I will know it is you is if you call me and I hear your voice, Nancy responds. Carrie's son Max was equally as suspicious. This person texting is not his mother. He sends her a message and quickly gets a response. Hey little man, how are you? Max asks the stranger 3 questions. 1. What is my middle name? 2. What was our first boxer's name? 3. Who was my best friend as a little kid? No response. On Carrie's Facebook account, this message gets posted. I have answered enough questions to prove myself to everyone. I am done. You can't either believe I am your daughter, mother, sister, and friend that you have known your whole life, or you can just leave me alone. I have proven myself over and over, and I'm done. I left on my own free will and I am sick of everyone giving me a hard time for doing what I needed to do. I am not missing, I just don't want to come home right now. I am a grown woman and if I feel like leaving home, I have the right. I asked my son Maxwell James, to come with me, but you didn't want to. So when I am ready to come back home, I will. I am sorry for hurting everyone and just up and leaving. I know I have upset some of you, but I needed to do this for me. Sorry, and I hope someday you can forgive me. I love you all very much, but I need time still to sort things out. August rolls around and Liz calls Dave in a panic. Her house was set on fire and burned down completely. All her belongings along with her pets had perished. Dave rushes to see her, freaking out. Officers inquired more information, saying this fire was definitely intentional. You think they were married with how much she's stalking me. She will not leave me alone. I just wish she would go away, Liz tells them. Dave, still distraught, is comforted by Liz, reiterating that they will be supporting one another no matter what. Without evidence of where Carrie could be, the case turned cold, and 2 years passed by. In 2015, 2 detectives, Avis and Doty, decided to look back into the case, but this time through the lens of if Carrie was even alive, in which they found no reason to believe so. Nobody had seen her, spoken to her on the phone, and her bank account was left untouched for the past 2.5 years. When they looked through the files, the name Liz Goyer seemed to continuously show up. There were never messages about this woman until Carrie went missing. Dave and Liz had given permission back in 2013 to have the contents of their phone downloaded when they first reported Carrie stalking them. They noticed Dave had received tens of thousands of texts from Carrie over the span of 2 years, and one specific image was found on Liz's phone gallery. It was a photo of Carrie's Ford Explorer, the one Dave took a picture of and sent to the police. And when looking through the data, the photo was taken a month prior to when Dave contacted the police about it. They noticed Liz had called Carrie's phone 6 times using *69 to block her caller ID, even though she claimed their only interaction was at that hallway. There was another photo of Liz duct taped in a car, but it was taken on Liz's phone, presumably using a self-timer. They decided to check the car again, thoroughly this time, and what they uncovered were bloodstains beneath the passenger seat. Liz became their prime suspect, and coincidentally, she files another report. She now believes that their stalker was Dave's ex of 12 years, Amy, the mother of his children, and that she killed Carrie. Shortly after, dispatch gets another call. This time, Liz had been shot in the leg at Big Lake Park in Council Bluffs. At first, she said she had no idea who it was and she couldn't get a good look, but then immediately changed her story, saying it was Amy and that she probably stole Dave's gun he had been keeping for protection. Detective Avis was immediately suspicious and didn't believe her story. They couldn't find evidence of anyone else at the park. They concluded that Liz must have shot herself. Detective Avis goes to Dave's apartment and tells him that he suspects his stalker to be his current girlfriend, Liz. And then, it all clicked for him. That's why those texts from Carrie knew what exactly he was doing. He couldn't believe she went to vandalize his shop, her own home, set her own house on fire, and killing her pets. And she shot herself in the leg. Detectives concluded it would have taken Liz 40 to 50 hours a week sending the amount of emails and texts she did to Dave. They brought her into interrogation. The IP address from the emails redirected back to Liz's address. The DNA in the blood-stained car seat belonged to Carrie, and they found the fingerprint from the mint packet in the car to be Liz's. And the final damning evidence was when they found an SD card in her tablet carrying thousands of deleted images, one of which was of Carrie's decomposing body. Even when confronted with all the evidence, Liz denied everything. The lies, deceit, and the amount of effort to trick Dave these past 2.5 years into staying by her side, while simultaneously tarnishing Carrie and his ex-wife's name, will never be understood. In 2017, Liz Goyer was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. On January 14, 2018, Jordan Turpin escaped through the window of her home at 5 a.m. and ran away down the neighborhood. She was shaking uncontrollably, grasping on an old cell phone her brother had, and proceeded to dial 911. The dispatcher picks up.
This is 911. Do you have an emergency?
I just ran away from home. I live in a family of 15, and we have abusing parents. Did you hear that?
Okay, how did they abuse you?
They hit us, they throw us across the room. They yank out our hair. I have my two little sisters right now are chained up.
Okay, I'm going to connect you to the sheriff's department so that they can help
What?
you. One moment, don't hang up.
A deputy arrived to meet up with Jordan wearing a body cam and asked some clarifying questions. Are you on medication? What is medication? She reiterated that her parents have chained up her sisters because they stole mother's food. If they noticed her missing, they will definitely cover it up. The bewildered deputy asked if she had any pictures to prove these claims, and immediately she says, "Yes, I do." She didn't at first, but her sister told her to take pictures as evidence. "Make sure you save that, okay?" he told her. At 7:23 a.m., police arrived to the Turpin house. They knocked on the door for over 2 minutes, and then it opens. The mother and father peek out. "Hello, we got a call to do a welfare check here." A warrant wasn't needed because children were in danger. Immediately, the mother began to breathe heavily. Both confused, the deputies enter the Turpin house. What they witnessed inside was one of the strangest cases they've ever come across. The atrocious smell of human feces, trash everywhere, food covered in mold, dead pets, and that was just the environment they were in. The Turpin household had a total of 13 biological children, 3 of which deputies saw with their own eyes chained to their beds. They thought the siblings were all mere kids, but over half of them were already adults. The youngest, a 2-year-old, and the eldest, 29. Every single one of them looked extremely malnourished, had bruises all around their bodies, and they were covered in dirt. Deputies immediately arrested the parents. Louise Turpin exclaimed, "Is that what this is about?" "Well, that's part of it," a deputy responds. All the siblings were then transferred to a hospital where they were fed and taken care of. The first time any of them felt any freedom and security. David and Louise Turpin, charged for abuse, torture, and false imprisonment of their children and dependent adult. They had many children because in their religious beliefs, God called on them to do so. The Turpin family had moved several times, from Fort Worth, Texas to Rio Vista and to Paris, California in 2014. They were actually deciding to move once again, and that's when Jordan Turpin knew she had to escape and call the police. Aside from their neighbors growing suspicions of their mostly invisible family, the public saw the Turpin household as a fun family, seeing pictures of them at Disneyland and other social events on Facebook. Upon moving to California, David Turpin registered his homeschool named Sandcastle Day School. It was quite simple, really. There were no requirements to submit assessments of their academic progress or show any evidence of homeschooling. A cruel and manipulative tactic, as their children literally had zero education, resulting in an extremely limited vocabulary, and combined with their isolation from the outside world, made it seemingly impossible to report their situation to authorities, let alone escape it. The kids were allowed to eat only once a day and bathe once a year. They would be chained to their beds up to 2 months at a time, only let go to brush or use the restroom. However, if the situation was urgent, they would end up defecating and lay in their filth until it was cleaned up at a later time, hence the atrocious stench of the house. Furthermore, the parents taunted and tormented their kids by leaving out pies, boxes of Krispy Kreme donuts, and candy to tempt them. However, if any dared to grab it, they would be chained to their beds immediately and beaten. The food would never be eaten either. it was just left to rot inside the box. What they were permitted to eat and survive on: peanut butter and bologna sandwiches. The eldest child, 29-year-old Jennifer Turpin, weighed a shocking 82 pounds. And Louise's terrible excuse on not feeding her kids pointed to fears of her family's medical history with diabetes. On February 2019, David and Louise Turpin, after over 2 decades, were finally sentenced for their malicious acts. Guilty to 14 counts of torture, abuse, and false imprisonment of their children and dependent adult. David Turpin was also charged with perjury with the California Department of Education for asserting that his children were being educated in their home school. In court, they continually said their behaviors were because of their religion, and that God called on them to do these actions, and they never intended to hurt their children. Both parents were sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. In October of 2018, Phoenix Luna visited Yuka Takaoka's bar. Just like Yuka, Phoenix was a host at a club called Fusion that was located nearby. The only difference was that its clients were women. Apparently, Yuka immediately became interested in the handsome 20-year-old, so much so that she began to visit Phoenix's club regularly. Yuka was not shy to use her money to spend time with her crush. Reportedly, Yuka Takaoka used as much as 1 million yen, or about $10,000 a week, quickly making Phoenix one of the highest-ranking hosts in the club. Although dating between a client and a host was not allowed, Yuka and Phoenix began to see each other outside work, and even then, Yuka was the one paying for everything. The thing is that Yuka was not really a rich girl. She had a nice amount of money saved up on her account, but she quickly used all of that to be with Phoenix. And when Yuka realized she was living way beyond her means, she turned to other, more drastic sources of income instead of slowing down. While Yuka's job at the club had been to entertain without any aspects, she now began to go on dates with older men and did something called delivery health. As prostitution is illegal in Japan, ordering a health girl to your home is a way to bend the rules. Technically, only intercourse in exchange for money is prohibited, which is why the health girls provide any other kind of services to their customer. But of course, as what happens behind closed doors is not monitored, many girls offer full service to get more money, and Yuka was not an exception. Even though Yuka did all of that to be happy with her crush, she was slowly but surely destroying her mental health in the process. There was no doubt Phoenix enjoyed spending time with Yuka, and she wanted to visit him at the club. After all, she was willing to spend a huge amount of money on him and take care of all expenses wherever they went. When Yuka then confessed her love to Phoenix in April of 2019, he replied by saying he liked her too. He planned to quit his job and move in with her, and then they would get married. To Yuka, those words were like a drug. She was addicted to Phoenix and did not want anything else in the whole world. However, the problem was that Phoenix never lived up to his promises. In May of 2019, Yuka paid a 2 million yen down payment for an apartment close to the Fusion Club and bought Phoenix a Honda for another 2 million yen, as he had requested. Meanwhile, Phoenix continued working as a host and started dating other women. He was seen by Yuka's friends with a number of girls outside of work, which suggested they were not his clients. In addition, when Yuka would call Phoenix, she often heard other girls giggling in the background, and still, she wanted to make it work. On May 20th, 2019, Yuka and Phoenix visited a shop called Nitori before heading to their new apartment. Yuka had most likely been very excited to spend the first night together in their new home, but her mood quickly changed as Phoenix did not pay any attention to her. Instead, he was on his phone and sleeping the whole time, leaving Yuka hurt, frustrated, and increasingly desperate. She had been building this fantasy world in her mind with Phoenix by her side, but when the relationship did not work similarly in real life, Yuka's obsessive love took a dark turn. 3 days later, on May 23rd, Yuka talked with her coworker about her problems with Phoenix and the lack of affection from his side. Yuka tried to call Phoenix as they were supposed to meet up, but instead, she found out he had made plans with another female client from the club. At that moment, Yuka's entire world shattered. Phoenix had originally said he would come to Yuka's apartment around noon, but he showed up at about 3 p.m. Apparently, the two chatted for a bit before Phoenix had a bath and laid down for a nap to recharge after a night of work. Nothing in the earlier conversation could have prepared him for what was about to happen. While Yuka has not said anything, she had actually gone through Phoenix's phone and found an intimate photograph of him with another woman, confirming her worst fear. Feeling more desperate than ever before, Yuka made sure Phoenix was asleep before she walked to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and headed to the bedroom. There, she got on top of the sleeping young man and plunged her knife into his stomach. As Phoenix awoke to the strange, uncomfortable feeling, he saw the large knife in his stomach, the blood on the bedsheets, and Yuka standing there staring at him and asking if he loved her. Terrified, Phoenix replied by saying he did love her and would stay with her forever. But as soon as Yuka relaxed a bit, Phoenix grabbed his phone, hit her in the face, and ran out of the apartment. Unfortunately, he just did not get that far. By the time Phoenix reached the first floor lobby, he had lost so much blood that he collapsed to the floor and passed out. The last thing Phoenix saw before everything went black was Yuka kneeling over him. When the police arrived at the scene shortly after, at about 3:50 p.m., they found Yuka Takaoka covered in blood, sitting next to her bleeding victim while casually smoking a cigarette and talking on her phone. Yuka showed little to no emotion or remorse when she was arrested, although another picture that was taken while she was sitting in the back of a police car captured her with a huge, excited smile as if she was proud of what she had done. When police then questioned her motives, Yuka replied, "I thought that was how I could be with him." Meanwhile, a severely injured Phoenix was taken to the hospital, where he remained in critical condition for 5 days. The doctor only gave him a 20% chance of survival. To everyone's surprise, he eventually recovered. As soon as Phoenix was released from the hospital, he tweeted. In an interview, he said he did not hold a grudge against Yuka, and even agreed she had a reason to stab him. According to Phoenix, he had always seen his relationship with Yuka as a host-client kind of thing, and had never agreed to be exclusive. Yuka pleaded guilty to all charges at the Tokyo District Court. On December 3rd, 2019, she was sentenced to 3 years and 6 months. Phoenix asked the court to give her a lighter sentence after receiving a 5 million yen settlement. The judge saw Yuka's actions as incredibly selfish, and due to her clear intention to kill, prison time was unavoidable. She will be released sometime in 2023 or 2024. Lindsay was 22 when she traveled from Britain to Japan to become an English teacher at the Nova Language School in Tokyo. She was living with her 2 roommates, and on March 26th, as she left for work, that would be the last time they see her. 6 days earlier, Lindsay was getting ready to go home from work when a man named Tatsuya approached her and told Lindsay she was his English teacher. Lindsay knew her student's faces well and told him that he has the wrong person, and proceeded to ride her bike back to her apartment. Upon arrival, she turns around to find that he followed her back, chasing after her. He asked if she can be his tutor, as he wanted to study abroad, and also if he can get a glass of water. Maybe he's just eccentric, she thought, so he was invited inside. Her roommates were home, so she made sure he was seen by them. While they were chatting, Tatsuya sketched a picture of Lindsay and wrote down his full name and email. On Saturday, March 24th, they met at a cafe for their tutoring session. After their English lesson was over, Tatsuya claimed he forgot his wallet and needed to get it. He invited Lindsay inside his apartment, located in the east of Tokyo. Lindsay told the taxi driver to wait for her outside as it would only take a second. But after 7 minutes, the driver noticed that there were no signs of her coming out, so he left. Lindsay's father received a call from the Nova Language School staff saying she hadn't shown up at work for the last 2 days. Her roommates contacted the police, and on record, they noticed Ichihashi had a previous stalking incident. Now they had proper cause to go inside, and a total of 9 police officers were outside at Ichihashi's apartment. As one of the officers opened the door, Tatsuya bursted out of the apartment. He jumped down the stairs to the lower level and quickly escaped into the streets. While investigating the apartment, police saw a bathtub on the balcony of the building. It was filled with sand and compost soil. What they discovered was Lindsay's body decomposing with clear signs of strangulation. Neighbors were called hearing a loud metal noise in the middle of the night, so that must have been Tatsuya dragging his bathtub onto the balcony. Police were unable to capture him, and news of Tatsuya quickly spread, with 30,000 wanted posters distributed all across Japan. Cardboard cutouts were placed around Tokyo, and even depictions of him in woman disguises were plastered everywhere. However, Tatsuya evaded the police so well that weeks turned into months. Lindsay's parents had flown to Japan, frustrated as there were still no updates on her daughter's killer. Lindsay's father even offered members of the Yakuza he had met at a bar bottles of whiskey, asking for their assistance. The Japanese police were under scrutiny for having 9 police officers let Tatsuya get away, and unfortunately, the investigation turned cold, and then 2 years had passed. Still on the run, Tatsuya had traveled from the northern region Aomori down to Okinawa and then settled in Osaka. The Japanese media and police released a new photograph of Ichihashi, stating they believe he had plastic surgery and to keep an eye on key defining characteristics on Tatsuya's face. The reward for capturing him went from 1 million yen to 10 million yen. And by this time, Tatsuya had already changed his appearance through self-mutilation, cutting off the moles on his cheek with a box cutter. He used scissors to cut off part of his lower lip, and even altered the shape of his nose using a sewing needle. For 13 months, he worked jobs in construction sites to pay for his plastic surgeries, altering his face even further. He removed his fingerprints, gained weight, and hopped around internet cafes under a new identity to stay the nights. It wasn't until one of his plastic surgeons realized the man he worked on was the culprit, and he tipped off the police after Ichihashi made the fatal error of doing a before and after photo. His cover was blown, and Tatsuya knew he needed to escape. On November 10th, as he fled to the ferry port heading to Okinawa, a worker recognized him from the new image posted and immediately contacted security. Shortly after, Tatsuya was caught by officers and arrested moments later. Before his trial in 2011, he had published an autobiography detailing his 2.5 years on the run and what he had to do to avoid detection. The court case was publicized all over Japanese media, where 32-year-old Tatsuya admitted to luring Lindsay into his apartment and strangled her, leaving the body inside the bathtub on the balcony. In front of the court, he fell to his knees and apologized. "I did not intend to kill her, but I am responsible for her death. I am very sorry for what I did," he said. The Hawker family urged the court to give him the death penalty. However, because he had no prior criminal record, the court opted to sentence him to life in prison instead. Lindsay's father spoke to the media and said, "We have waited 4.5 years to get justice for Lindsay. We are very pleased, and I would also like to thank the Japanese people. We would not have got this far without everyone's help. Lindsay loved Japan, and you have not let her down. Thank you." Susumu Denpa Shonen was aired on the Nippon TV network in 1998. Till this day, it's known as one of the most evil and inhumane reality shows to ever exist. Tomoaki was a struggling comedian in his 20s, desperate for fame, when one day he was selected to take part in an unknown reality show. He decided to take on this challenge, completely unaware of the immense struggle he was about to face. Producers painted the experience as an experiment. They even told Tomoaki that the show may not air. He was tasked with documenting his day-to-day experiences for them to be reviewed. Just, he had no idea that these videos would be live-streamed to the world. The moment he entered the small room, producers took away his clothes, food, and outside communication. Instead of being known by his name, Tomoaki was called Nasubi, the Japanese word for eggplant. Throughout the entirety of the broadcast, an animated eggplant was put on screen to cover his privates for television audience. The tiny room was filled to the brim with magazines, where the goal of the show was to survive by applying to their sweepstakes in the hopes to win prizes until he reached the combined total of 1 million yen, allowing him to exit the room. Over the course of the entire broadcast, Nasubi submitted an average of 1,400 applications a week. Immediately, his biggest challenge was starvation. He would go days without a single meal until he finally won a 5-kilogram bag of rice. But there was no pot for him to cook it in. Nasubi tried eating the grains raw but knew it wouldn't work. Until he figured out a way to use one of the fiber jelly containers he won previously to put on the stove and cook the rice. If it wasn't rice he won, he was eating dog food for an extended amount of time. He did win a can of meat sauce, but couldn't open it without a can opener or a knife. Day in and day out, he would spend his time applying for sweepstakes and answering the phone. Some bigger prizes he won consisted of a couple thousand yen, a stationary bike, a TV that only showed static because he had no antenna and connection, and a toothbrush and toothpaste so he can finally brush 3 months into the challenge. He never won himself some clothes, aside from a pair of women's underwear that was many sizes too small. So, he opted to stay naked. The show was gaining popularity at a rapid pace with over 17 million viewers in Japan, pranking him by having food delivery men knock on the door with delicious meals that weren't intended for him to mock him and get his hopes up. It became a problem quickly, so producers blindfolded Nasubi and transferred him far from the original location and into a near identical room. And once again, he went back to applying for sweepstakes. After 6 months, he made over 500,000 yen and submitted close to 40,000 sweepstakes entries. He reached the breaking point. Nasubi began pleading to the camera, saying everything around me is literal junk. These prizes are worthless, descending deeper into madness after months of bad luck, barely winning anything. Producers decided to relocate him once again. Fortunately, this new place brought upon good luck as Nasubi started winning prizes again. He had a tent to sleep in, a PlayStation, 10,000 yen in gift vouchers, and a set of car tires. After spending 335 days alone in a room, live-streamed in front of millions, Nasubi finally reached a combined total of 1 million yen. It was over. He completed this grueling challenge and is finally free. Or so he thought. The show became so popular that producers didn't want it to end just yet. They took him to South Korea for a victory vacation, but the catch was that he was now tasked to win enough money to buy a first-class flight back home to Japan. Because Nasubi was already accustomed to this lifestyle, he complied and got the money after a couple months. In the final act of malice, once Nasubi flew back to Japan, he was again taken to another tiny room. It looked like the nightmare was going to begin all over again. Nasubi simply began to take off his clothes, and all of a sudden, The walls of the room abruptly collapsed, and he was greeted with cheers from a live audience congratulating him on finishing the show. Thoroughly confused as the comedian completed this torturous challenge, yet he had no idea that everything was being broadcasted live for millions to watch.